Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This is Dan coming to you, as always, from the studios of DTM Enterprises, my little wood shop in the backyard. Really been having a busy last few weeks and getting out episodes, and my story came out lately, and today we have another special guest. Mike J is here at the table to tell his story of coming to recovery through the 12 steps here, and I've known Mike since I've started coming around to our home group, Spiritual Underground. I'm pretty sure he was at the very first meeting that I ever came to at the Spiritual Underground. And so I've watched, had my eye on him, and then eventually ended up having the honor that Mike actually asked me to take him through the steps here. And that's been, maybe a year ago or so now?
Yeah.
So we've done that, and really just encourage him watching. I'll be frank and say, for a while you had crawled in a shell that looked like it was really tough for you to get out of, and I can see it cracking nowadays, and you're coming around to a new level of freedom. At least that's the way I can see it happening,
mm-hmm.
and I'm excited for that to be going on with you. Josh is in the studio with us too, just to provide some extra juice. It's always cool to have some extra faces in the room too when we're doing this thing. So how you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing good. Great, actually.
Couldn't be better weather this weekend, huh?
Yeah,
it sounds like you've been busy doing a lot of cool things this weekend, so that's always, anytime I'm doing that, my spirits will lift when I get to do things that lift them.
Yeah, speaking of being in the shell, I've spent so much time in the past few years just staying isolated, and I've been working out of that, but yesterday I totally worked out of it.
Yeah.
I stayed busy all day and busy with really good things, and it felt great.
Yep. Yeah. I read a little something the other day about being busy and how it can be a kind of a shelter in some ways, but that doesn't certainly apply to all of us. I personally like to be busy, and but I can hide in my busyness too. I can disappear in it, but I know that's not what's happening for you. You need a little more busy in your life because you were leaning towards the other extreme.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I am happy to watch how it's progressing and how you're doing, how you're coming through that low spot that you've been experiencing here lately, or in the past. I don't know. I don't want to put no real time frame on it, but so we'll start as we always start here. We always start with somebody's sobriety date and let the story evolve from there.
Okay, sounds good. My sobriety date is October 25th, 2012. And my home group, of course, is Spiritual Underground. Actually was not that I had any major role to play in starting it, but I was in on the start, so it's been great to see it start from Brian's basement to, 40, 50 guys a week, sometimes more on birthdays.
More than that nowadays.
Yeah. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just begin at the beginning. Just to give you a little background, I'll just go back to my childhood, which I believe strongly influenced how I headed to ultimately to alcoholism.
Absolutely.
My parents were really young. They were barely 20 years old when they had me. I never experienced during my really young years any kind of alcohol use around the house or anything like that. I have no brothers or sisters, so I was an only child, obviously.
Yeah.
And how that plays into it is my parents ultimately got divorced when I was either 8 or 9 years old, and that was one of the first times. I had another incident when I was 4 that I can clearly remember, because we talk a lot about in recovery about when we feel less than, what was the first instance that made you feel less than.
Yep.
And a couple things. One, when I remember from 3rd grade on, I guess it was about that time when my parents separated and were getting divorced, that I was a latchkey kid. I mean, my mom barely made enough money for us to get by, and she couldn't pay for a babysitter or anything, and so I had to come home from school, which seemed like an eternity, as you can imagine, at 8 years old, at 2:30 in the afternoon, and she didn't get home until about 6.
Wow. Yeah.
And many of those years, that was back in the dark ages, so we didn't have any technology. Most of the time we didn't have a television either.
Oh, really?
And so it brought about some good things, but I just remember that loneliness struck me very hard when I was very young, and then especially when my dad came to pick up his stuff and totally move all his stuff out. I just felt I wasn't angry. I wasn't. I just felt totally lost. Like I didn't think of it at the time, but I felt all alone.
Yeah.
I felt like I never had the thoughts of that I caused the problem. I know some people do, but I really never have ever felt like that, because I could, for whatever reason, could see with some childlike objectivity that I wasn't causing my parents to be mad, and they didn't make me feel that way, or didn't
Put you in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Or they sometimes people inadvertently insert their kids in the middle of it.
Oh yeah, you see that a lot. People, it's hard enough for kids. Kids are resilient, but I don't care who the kid is in the situation.
You're gonna take on some of that.
It's difficult. Yeah, and I mentioned the latchkey kid thing because that just fueled my isolation and feeling like I was alone, and that something's just not right. So I can remember back in those early years feeling that way. Then whatever comments I make about my mom, I'm not saying them to tear her down or anything, but my mom has always had a very difficult life, and she was, let's just put it in a mild sense, she was the glass is half empty person. And so I picked up a lot of programming from that. And, we'd always never had enough money. We're always broke. I probably built up some childhood resentment because I felt like, well, I couldn't afford to get anything. I couldn't ask my mom for anything. So I'm just going to do it for myself, which the good thing that came out of it is I started cutting grass when I was probably 8 or 10 years old, and always had some kind of way to make money from that age. So there's positives and negatives. But anyway, that melting pot, that stew that continued to get stirred up, really got a lot of negative messages about how I'm not good enough.
Yeah. And also an era of scarcity.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
That everything was like at the edge of being not enough. And not just you, but enough to eat, enough to live, enough a roof under your head, over your head.
Now, I did not grow up in a wealthy neighborhood whatsoever. It was I'd call it lower middle class up in the east side of Indianapolis. And at that time, it was where a lot of people had been moving in from other states to find work. And so there were decent family values, but none of us had a lot.
Right.
But almost all my neighbor kids had a lot more than I did. And so that affected me some, again, with, like you said, scarcity, feeling like I'm not enough, something's wrong. But the flip side of it was it made me have some drive to take action in my life and pursue things that I had interest in. But I think that laid the groundwork, without going into a lot of gory details, for me to end up where I was and where I am now. Unlike a lot of folks, I really never had. I had a couple of brushes with drugs and alcohol when I was a teenager. First time I ever drank a beer was was working. I think I was 15. Got a summer job working with some bricklayers carrying all the mortar and stuff, sitting down the concrete blocks. That was a grueling job. It was good. Made me work my butt off, but I remember the guys would come after we left, I take that back. That job, I don't remember drinking there. It was when I worked for my uncle's electrical contracting business during the summer. I think I was 16. And the guys who we knocked off started at 7:30, knocked off about 3:30. The guys would always pick up beer after work. And they said, "Here, kid, you want one?" And I said, "Sure." So I drank it. That felt pretty good. And then when I went into the house, it dropped me off. "You want another one?" I said, "Sure." And the next thing I know, I go in the house, drink the other beer, lay down on my bed and fell asleep. And then my mom comes home and finds this beer bottle
sitting
on my dresser. So she wasn't pleased, to say the least. But nothing really came of it. I felt good, but I never really took off with alcohol at that time.
Yeah. You didn't drink enough to feel bad that time, like a hangover kind of thing.
No.
My very first one, I went way over the mark, man. And,
oh, wow.
Felt like, I passed out and throwed up and don't remember anything, blacked out, basically.
Wow. Yeah. Had a brush with some marijuana and some other drugs when I was around about that age. Almost got arrested. But again, that kind of scared me out of it. I was always had a kind of a guilty conscience. So, I that was enough at that time to frighten me out of pursuing that further. And, of course, when I went to college, did the fraternity thing, and on the weekends we'd drink like crazy, and but it wasn't every day. And I went the whole last 2.5 years of college without drinking anything or having any kind of substance. And then, and so, still had all those rumblings in my heart and my mind about pursued a lot of things because I wasn't like trying to get attention, but I wanted to raise my recognition amongst everybody so I could feel better about myself.
Yeah, we all want to be noticed.
And so I did tons of activities in college, high school and college, and it was great. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it, but I still had that nagging feeling that I'm just not good enough. People don't like me.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in high school because of the isolation, or so as a result of some of that was that you started engaging in extracurricular activities in school instead of having to go home and stay at home alone.
Oh, yeah, I did it. And plus I worked part-time pretty much all the way through high school, about 20 hours a week. Because that was the only way I was going to get any money to buy things that I wanted or do anything.
Yeah, make it yourself.
Right. And didn't turn into a big resentment. It fueled me to...
it's not a bad thing to get you up and moving, no doubt about it.
But, relatively high school and most of college, other than, my first couple of years in college, first year and a half, I hit the fraternity parties, did those kinds of things, falling down drunk, puking. Somebody told me one time that if you lay down in your bed and put your foot on the floor, the room will stop spinning.
Yeah.
That didn't work.
Didn't work.
And... but I noticed once I started in my first class in my major, I barely got by in the class, and I was always a high B student. I wound up being on the dean's list the last 2 years of college, and but I was deteriorating. I was doing really horrible in that class, and if it wouldn't have been for a group project that we all got an A on, that I did work my butt off on, I squeaked out with a C in the class, and it was a wake-up call for me. School was important enough to me to try to do something about changing my behavior, changing my way of being, to move forward. I guess that brings me up to the point of when I was 23, I'd graduated from college a year before, was engaged, got married when I was 23, and early on in marriage, I'd buy some beer and drink some beer a few times during the week, but it went on a slow burn at that point. Found myself drinking 2-3 times a week. This is over a long, protracted period of time. And then there were times where I would drink a beer, and then I'd have to have a second one, and then I wanted more, and I would sneak around so that I could drink another beer and hide it from my wife and throw it in the trash can and cover it up with other stuff.
Oh, yeah?
But I never really got drunk, so that's where the excuses start. And that went on for a long time. And so ratchet all the way up, have 2 children, I think the third one by then, when I was around 36, 37, something like that. I got the bright idea when I come home from work, it sounds pretty good. I'm going to stop by the liquor store and get some orange juice and vodka. And so I mixed it together in this orange juice container and drank it on the way home. Didn't drink a huge amount, but got a nice little buzz. And just over a period of time, that escalated like crazy.
Yeah.
It got to be where I'd only do that once or twice a week, to where, you ratchet on ahead a couple of years, and I was drinking every day of the week.
Was you staying on the vodka?
Yeah. I mean, I'd stay on the vodka, and I'd have beer at home too, because I would go run in the house, and the first thing I'd get there was go grab a beer, so my wife wouldn't have smell the alcohol. So I snuck around. Yeah. Didn't realize that I had a problem at the time, and this went on for quite a long time.
I'd forgotten it. A vodka and orange juice was a staple of mine too.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Well,
I always drank beer, but it was one of the things that I just liked. I
mm-hmm.
mean, whatever reason, I think some of it was because it was easy to hide was the other thing, but.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I hit it well for a while, but my wife was very hypersensitive about alcohol. She barely drank at all. Drunk at all. But that just slowly and gradually spun out of control. It was really wild. It turned into, like I said, a couple of times a week to 3 or 4 times a week, to every day of the week, and I was always trying to hide it. And I think in some respects I hid it pretty well, because most of my friends, nobody had any idea that I was an alcoholic, because I really drank only in the evenings. I never really started drinking during the day, maybe a few times, but really not on a regular basis. But it spun out of control really over time, but in my mind very quickly too. And it escalated to the point where while I was still high functioning, earned a good income, was involved in all my children's activities, I knew I had a problem when my sons were in high school, middle school and high school, because I'd pick them up or take them to a lot of activities. One of my oldest son was in a lot of sports. My middle son did a lot of sports too and other activities. And perfect time for me to drink was to sneak it in my car and run by the liquor store and down some vodka and get a really nice buzz on. And that wasn't enough. And there were many times, much to my embarrassment, that I drank that I was totally obliterated. Don't know how I made it through. But, like the old saying there, but for the grace of God.
Yep.
I never had a DUI.
Interesting how the cars, was a shelter for me too, and I thought that was okay, that to go driving and drinking was a way to do it, because I could be alone, and you kind of, I don't know, there's something about that, like being mobile. Like I learned as if I would stop and park and sit someplace, somebody would eventually take notice of me.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I kept mobile, I really didn't pick up too much attention, especially if I went rural. I wasn't tooling around town. I'd go out in the country, get some beer, get something to drink or whatever, and be by myself.
Yeah.
And just drive in the country.
Well, in my craziness, I didn't go out to the country. I'd drive down the Waterson Expressway, juggling my vodka and orange juice, or when in the height of it all, I just slugged down the vodka straight. Yeah. And because all I wanted to do was get smashed as fast as I could.
Yeah, straight vodka there's not
pretty
a lot
nasty,
of things in the world much worse than straight
especially
vodka.
The cheap stuff.
Yeah, and warm too.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So anyway, I went on that path for a long period of time, from the time I was, late 30s, till I didn't. Like I said, my sobriety date's October 2012. So I was 54 when I got sober, and got into the program. But all during that time, it's like I said, it spun out of control. I drank increasing amounts. I would, and the insidious part of it all was not only the drinking and and just all the nastiness that brings with you in your life, and how terrible you feel. But it sent me further. My tendency to be isolated, that pattern that was created with me when I was young, reared its head. There's some things were difficult at home, and the pressures of life, pressures of work. I drink to calm myself down. I drink, and I increasingly drank more and more and more to try to hide and block out all the pain and the frustration of things that I really could not control or could not change about other people. And then I really isolated myself a lot from my ex-wife, to some degree from my kids, and it got to be where all I really wanted to do was just go home and get drunk. And it got bad. I mean, I was at a point where sometimes I'd knock off a fifth of vodka at night.
Yeah.
Many times a week. And, I'd drive down the road taking my son to high school, and my oldest son, I remember, and my acid reflux got so bad that I'd break out in a really bad sweat and be in such severe pain in the morning. And I was wondering, why am I having this problem?
Yeah.
Well, I'm plugging down a pint to a fifth of vodka every night. No wonder it's happening.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely miserable. So the insanity of it was just was crazy. But I still, for a lot of that time, did not really believe that I had a problem. I did, because I made a lot of money, had a nice car, I was married, had 3 kids,
house,
house, all the outward things in life,
right, yeah,
of quote unquote success. And that's not that there wasn't any good in it. It was good.
Yeah, nice house, 2 cars in the garage,
yep.
2.3 kids, or whatever the decimal point
right.
is, and yep, and everything. How could I possibly be having a problem? People that have all this don't have a problem.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I didn't live under a bridge. I grew up in the days where I imagine people still do this. We called them hobos. They would catch the train, and a lot of those people were characterized as
yep.
alcoholics and had their paper bag with some kind of bottle of something in it.
I actually kind of looked at my drinking at some point as being like a status symbol kind of thing. It was something that like you did if you were successful.
Yeah. I
deserved it.
And
I worked hard.
Yeah. I kind of got that attitude after a while. It's like, because my wife is so vehemently opposed to it all, that it also became my mom. To whatever degree she lectured me and read the riot act to me when I was a kid, then I would interpret things from my ex-wife that were reminiscent of my mother.
Yep.
And I was thinking, well, I just want to have a few drinks, leave me alone. And she'd get really pissed about that.
Yeah.
And she had every right to, because it was creating a big problem. And it just fueled my isolation, to where I distanced myself from her and most everybody around me, even though I was still functioning, still working, and all that. So, like I said, I never had a DUI. God knows I didn't have that. How that ever happened, but it did. And just it was out of control. I began to increase. I battled depression a lot since I was in my 30s, and alcohol certainly does not help your depression.
And nope, it is a depressant, as a matter of fact.
It numbs the pain for a little while, but it doesn't take it away, and you feel worse than you did when you started. And I just went down that path for a long time.
Well, a lot of people come in here saying that they're depressed.
Yeah.
And you say, damn sure you are, man. You've been pouring a depressant down your throat for X amount of years.
Right.
Right. Anybody's going to be depressed after doing that.
Yeah, I've heard from Dr. Brady that in almost every case of addiction, there is an element of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
It's part of that brain chemistry thing that makes alcohol trigger us differently than it does a normal person,
right.
So-called normal person.
Or as the book would tell us, restless, irritable, and discontent.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of the same symptoms.
So, let's see. I don't know how to delicately put this because this is not my proudest moment of my whole life, but ratchet forward to when right about my 45th birthday, a few days after my 45th birthday, which was 2003, something like that. My wife had gone out of town, and I forget what she went out of town for, but she was visiting her aunt and uncle in Virginia Beach area. And I was going to go to a Kansas Styx concert. And I did. I went, and my oldest son was about 16 at the time, so he could take over his brother and sister. And so I did. And being the cheapskate I went and bought myself a pint of Jack Daniels before I went to the concert, and I downed the whole thing before I went in the concert. And I'd drunk that much before, and I thought, this is not going to be a problem. That way I don't have to pay $7 a shot for something and spend a fortune.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's really expensive to get drunk at a show.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened to this day for sure, but somehow, some way, I blacked out. I got in there, I bought myself a Diet Pepsi, sat down to listen to the show, and I don't remember anything about the show. I don't remember what happened to me or anything, but all I recall is I'm as embarrassed to say this. I went out to go to the restroom, and there's a big line. So I thought, well, I'll go up to the upper level of the arena and find a bathroom there. So I went up this incline. It wasn't stairs, but it was like a place where they would ride the security carts around and things like that. And again, I blacked out. The next thing I know is I found myself urinating on the side of a vending machine. And all I could remember was a couple of security people manhandling me and putting the zip ties on my back. And I got sent off to jail. They hit me with public intoxication, indecent exposure, and disorderly conduct. And
no peeing on a Coke machine,
yeah,
dude.
no peeing on a Coke machine. And it's absolutely the most humiliating thing that ever happened to me in my life. I was so out of it. Sometimes it doesn't matter whether this happened or not. It happened. But sometimes I think I might have been drugged also. Because it was so just out of the ordinary for me. But regardless, I was in a situation I should have never put myself in. But the height of my craziness and my drinking, all I wanted to do was get drunk. I thought I'd get drunk and enjoy the show. And there's other concerts I went to that I got so drunk I can't remember anything from the concert.
Yep.
During that period of time.
Yep, I can remember being poked and woke up, and it's time to go. The lights are coming back on. I missed another show, or at least the second 2/3 of it, or something like that, and dragging my ass out of once more another concert that I paid for and basically missed.
Yeah,
I said into my podcast yesterday. We just once again I way overshot the mark. I always had trouble hitting that plateau where.
Right. I got to that point almost every night because I could not get the right kind of buzz or drunkenness or whatever you want to call it.
It's tough when you're sneaking it, because then that's even a harder target to hit, when you're trying to do it on the sly. Yeah,
and I was always trying to hide it because my wife had this natural aversion. Her dad was a pretty heavy drinker. I would not I don't know that he was an alcoholic, and she had an instance where one of her high school friends was drinking and drove on a motorcycle and got killed. So that traumatized her big. And, I wasn't helping her at all. So that's one of my big character defects, that instead of being the kind of man and husband I should have been, I was avoiding that and deteriorating that situation.
Yeah. But just think in a way that's also part of that isolation mode, probably.
Sure.
I mean, it's even though you don't really. I'm not sure that you're really purposely processing that. I'm going to do this. A plus B equals C. Like, alcohol plus this is going to get me back to. But in a way, it's another one of these numbing everything, hiding.
Right.
If I can isolate in plain sight.
Yeah. And it was all about hiding it for me. I was all my drinking career, as we call it, was trying to find out how I could sneak out to the garage, because I'd keep a bottle of vodka in my car, and sneak out in the garage and throw down a couple of gulps at every opportunity.
Yeah.
And in the height of the madness, I was sneaking out to the car, and even if the vodka was hot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bad when you're buying cheap vodka.
Cheap hot vodka and car temperature vodka.
Oh, yeah. Ugh. It was nasty.
Yeah, you think about that too, because I hid it in separate places. I had a little dormitory refrigerator upstairs. I had a refrigerator downstairs, and in the wintertime and stuff. And in another house I lived in, I would put stuff. We had window wells in the basement, and I put replacement windows down there that would open. They were sliding windows, so that I could set my beer in the window well, and that would keep it cold in the wintertime, because it'd be out there in the ambient temperatures. And here you are, think about how many times you went to the garage. It's like,
right.
Just how many times does a guy got to go to the garage in a day?
And I'm sure my wife was
doing?
Wondering that, and I didn't think she was seeing it, but I'm sure she.
My garage door here has a very distinctive sound, and I guess that's another thing. I've grown up in this house for that many years, so I mean, like, that garage door has such a distinctive sound. Like, if I heard it on a tape, a recording of it, I'd know what that noise is, and it's almost impossible to do. It's a door that's almost impossible to do silent too.
Yeah.
Some of that you could sneak, and you can open that door and get it shut without maybe nobody noticing it. But
yeah, I spent many times in my efforts to try to hide it was come up with excuses to run to the store real quick when I was out.
Yep.
And I'd stop in the
story we was telling.
Yeah, the drugstore, and I'd start visiting different places, because I thought they're going to catch on. They probably knew anyway.
Yeah.
Because I was there's probably 3 or 4 places I went, but I went enough that they surely knew that.
Yeah. It was the summertime. I would cut the grass, and I'd always need to get some more beer before I could cut the grass, but I would tell my wife I was going to get gasoline for a lawnmower. And I always kind of, like, the other day, it just dawned on me as I was telling the stories, like, she must have thought that I just went to get enough gas to cut the grass one time. Because I needed to get gas every time I went to the every time it was time to cut the grass, I needed some gasoline.
Yeah.
But what we really needed was a stop at the beer joint,
Absolutely.
to be ready. And I would set the cooler around the corner behind a tree or something to keep it out in the yard, and stash that stuff around so that I could be rolling around. And I know there was I still drank openly to some level. Like, she knew,
right.
but it certainly didn't look like it was a quantity that was being consumed. You know, I worked real hard to make it look like maybe I had 3 beers when it was really 9 or 12 or whatever.
Yeah. I made every effort to get as much as I could to drink anywhere I went. Again, I'd have to try to sneak around. I'd go to these conventions for my work, and they'd have these nice open bar cocktail parties, and I always had an excuse to go somewhere, and then while I was there, I would get 2 drinks for myself. I'd get it like a double shot of bourbon or vodka or whatever it was, down that real quick, throw the cup away, then get something for my wife, and then I'd have another drink for myself, or a beer or whatever, to make it look like I was only drinking 1 or 2 beers in the night, because she would read me the riot act about it.
Yeah. You learned how to stack those drinks up quicker. Go out to eat and, like, swing through the bar and get a shot real quick, when I'm sitting at the table drinking beer at a rate that's slower than I want to be.
Right.
Go in the restroom, slide by and tell the bartender, double shot, quick.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's insanity, man.
I don't think I ever did that, but I can see how that could happen. I guess I didn't have the bright idea that I could do that. But, at that instant when I got arrested, it was the most humiliating thing ever happened to me in my life, especially when I had to, midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, whenever it was, call from the jail on that phone, try to get a hold of my son, let him know where I was, and you could just hear the terror in his voice. And I explained to him the best as I could, because I was still drunk as all get out. I couldn't hardly hold it together at all. And
covering your ass at the same time.
Right. And I just told him kind of what was happening. I said, if Mom calls to check in on you, don't tell her. I will tell her when I went home, and when she got home. And I did tell her. It was, and that one time was probably the only time that I ever came clean about anything to her of significant magnitude like that. That what exactly happened, and made all the promises that I'd stop drinking, and had to get an attorney and do 40 hours of community service, and got all the charges expunged ultimately.
Well, they charge you with like a PI or something?
Pardon me?
They charge you with PI, public intoxication?
I could pick which one. They dropped 2 of the charges, and I could pick whichever one that I wanted the charges to stick, and then do the 40 hours of service. So I just kept disorderly conduct.
Oh, is that what?
Yeah.
Okay. I was say they get you for indecent exposure for doing that. They
Right.
get you.
Yeah, they had all 3 of the charges, and I was really scared at first. But then when I talked to an attorney, I had to spend about, this is 20 years ago almost, $500.
Yeah. For the attorney.
But it ultimately got taken care of. But I didn't stop drinking then.
Yep. Wasn't enough.
I tried to white knuckle it myself.
Did you?
And I would go periods of time where I'd have a month or 2, whatever. Went a long time that first year after that instance of not drinking. But eventually it would creep back in again because I was restless, irritable, and discontent.
Yeah.
I was totally dissatisfied with a lot of things that were going on in my life. Never really looked at it like, and I internalized it like it's all my fault. But instead of doing something about it, I just put more fuel on the fire. So I went on that from that point, from about 2004 till 2012. So 8 years of where I tried to drink, then I quit for a little while, drink, quit for a little while, drink, quit for a little while, and it was miserable because I'd ultimately get caught and have to try to lie my way out of it, and there was no lying my way out of it because people knew better. So that was equally miserable because I wasn't doing anything or being any way or trying to be a part of the solution. I was just staying trapped in my misery in my own self-created prison, so to speak. Till finally I had a drinking episode, probably late, maybe the fall of 2012, right before I quit drinking altogether and got in the program, where we had an argument about it, and one of the times I did listen to my ex-wife and say, she asked me if I'd get some help. I said, okay. And so that's where through another friend who introduced me to Christopher. Christopher was my first contact with anything dealing with recovery. I'd been to counselors for depression and so forth, but I even hid from my doctor. I don't know how my blood chemistry stayed healthy because in a normal range, because I figured by then my liver was probably getting hammered pretty bad. But somehow I was able to mask all of that. And then so I went to see Christopher for a few counseling sessions, and probably the second counseling session, he's like, well, why don't you try a couple of AA meetings? And naturally, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, what if I know somebody?
Or was it?
Or what if I had all these different fears and excuses in my mind? So I finally tried a meeting, and sure enough, I discovered a former business partner. We talked about it. She had been in recovery for a few years before I was in, and so that helped break down some barriers. It's like, okay, I'm not the only one.
Yep.
And then I walked into one of the first few meetings I went to and recognized some familiar faces, and my walls just tumbled at that point because I did not feel like I was alone. I felt like because of the anonymity in the program, that I knew people weren't going to be talking behind my back. I just felt all those barriers drop. I did not feel like or believe that I had anything to be afraid of by being in the program. And I remember it was either the second or third meeting that I attended the Suburban's Men's Group for a long time. before we started having Spiritual Underground. And it was like the second or third meeting I ever went to. Mike H. and Darren F. spoke up at the meeting. And I just bawled my eyes out because they told their stories. They told about what they had encountered. And in both cases, just seemingly impossible odds of recovering.
Yeah.
And for the life to have meaning and purpose. And it just, it really helped me realize that, if there's hope for these guys, there's hope for me.
Yeah.
So that was
kind of like, if that dude can get sober,
yeah. And I immediately recognized when I devoured the big book right away, and saw, and as you know, I have a significant religious upbringing and have a theological background, and I could recognize spiritual principles in that book from the start that was comforting. And I was really comforted because it encouraged you to, or does encourage us to have an open mind, to dispel all our previous notions.
Yep.
Bill W. says, create a God of your own understanding. And I didn't have too much trouble with that. I feel like I'm fortunate in that I know a lot of people struggle with that, the God thing. But probably I struggled a little bit with expanding my concept of God. And instead of treating God like a vending machine, dear God, bail me out of this mess. Yep. Dear God, fix this, fix that. It's challenged my whole way of thinking and being with respect to a spiritual relationship with a power greater than myself. But anyway, from that, what I meant to say was from that, so for about 8 years, I just went that back and forth dance and finally entered the program and found a tremendous amount of freedom and relief from the very start. Now, working the steps is another story. The first 3 came real easy for me. And I really didn't start working the steps diligently until I was at least 6 months in AA. I did develop a pattern I did read the big book. I did go to meetings regularly, 3, 4, 5 meetings a week. I didn't do the 90 and 90, but and so I really struggled with the 4th step, where we list
we do inventory.
We do our inventory, because I always struggle with, do I really have a resentment about this or that? I was encouraged, I know Christopher's rule is kind of to try to have at least 100 things on the list or something like that. And I was like, no way, I don't have 100 resentments. Well, I came up with 60 or 70.
Yeah.
And that was eye-opening. It really helped me realize that I had work to do. Probably, just honestly, the toughest spot for me, and you and I know this from talking together, is the amends process.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want to do amends. I have a lot of trouble, or have had a lot of trouble, seeing my role in the situation and where I really harmed somebody.
Right.
So I've made some amends, and there's one amend that I've not been able to make so far that bothers me at times, because I'd really like to be able to do that. I don't know if it's ever going to turn out to be one of those where to try to do so would create more harm or not.
Yeah. But
so we'll have to come up with some creative way to make a living amends. But I'll leave that up to my higher power to work in that situation and help me figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I listened to a speaker this morning live at a meeting that spoke very eloquently of 2 amends that he has been unable to complete, and he made the exact right point, is that he is willing to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all the step requires, to
Right.
be honest.
Right.
It doesn't actually require that we execute them. Although that's
That's
what we're
ideal.
aiming at.
Right.
The step requires that we be willing to do it.
Well, and since then, a significant part of my recovery has been I've gone through the past few years a very difficult time of depression, anxiety, and fear, albeit self-centered. As I said before, I've struggled off and on with depression ever since I was in my 30s. And I believe and convinced, both from experience and from getting medical advice, that there's a brain chemistry issue with that. And I bring that up because for a long time I felt, again, less than, like I wasn't good enough, something's wrong with me, when I'd see other people around me happy, joyous, and free, and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
Now, I definitely had a role to play in that, and I'm only kind of coming out of the fog now. And I see that very clearly, but I went down a really very, very dark place. And the reason why I bring that up is a lot of times we don't want to say those kinds of things, or we certainly don't hear them in the rooms when people are in sobriety, because sometimes I think we want to just tell the good stuff. Not always, but
I hear you.
And I felt really self-conscious and bad about that. I thought, how can I possibly be of any assistance or service to somebody else? Here I am, miserable, really struggling with a lot of issues, legitimate issues too. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't just like I was making everything up, but so I bring all this up just to say that in the past 5 years, the thing that has kept me, I'm thankfully I've not had a drink, not had any, had to drug over it. And when I have thought that idea or had that kind of concept, I was able to fend that off pretty well, because immediately what would pop into my mind was, that's not really going to solve any problems. Getting another drink or going out and getting plastered is not going to solve anything. As a matter of fact, it'll make things a lot worse. And I sincerely believe that if I started drinking again, it would kill me.
Yeah.
And probably in not very short order.
The easy way I always heard somebody said it real simple was that, let's say I got a problem and I'm going to drink over it.
Right.
Now I've still got the problem.
Right.
And a new one.
And the new one. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And all the consequences that come with that. So I've had to reconcile in my own mind going through this to pull up out of this dark spot, out of the pit of despair, sometimes honestly feeling like I don't want to be alive anymore.
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot in the rooms.
And we see it pan out in reality.
Yes,
people
it does.
taking their own lives all the time, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even, with years of sobriety, they
absolutely.
Do it.
Yeah, you hear stories of people 20, 30 years sober, and they go back out drinking again.
Or kill themselves.
Or kill themselves. So thank God so far, as I continue to do this thing day by day, what has helped me immensely is working through the steps again, being diligent to stay plugged in, to go to meetings, to get over my own self-centered fears and beliefs that nobody really cares about me and loves me, when in fact I have a lot of people around me that I know love me and care about me.
Absolutely.
And recognizing that within myself and admitting it, it's okay, because I had created all this false notion that people don't really love me, and because I'm going through all these struggles that I didn't have anything of value to add. And I really believe I do have something valuable to add.
Absolutely.
And sorry, I didn't mean to choke up.
Hey,
you know me.
That's actually the best.
But that's
when you know honesty has showed up.
Yeah. Because there's surely got to be people out there who struggle. I mean, we all struggle, and a lot of times we don't know what other people are struggling about.
Yep.
And I'm learning that I don't necessarily have to
talk about my troubles to be of strength and service to somebody, or don't have to necessarily verbally identify with everything. One thing that I've been dwelling on a lot lately in order to be service and helpful to other people is to go back to something I learned a long time ago and want to become a much better practitioner about, is ask people questions. Ask them to tell them about themselves to me. Listen. You can understand a lot about someone else's perspective if you just listen. And I think that's a lot of what all of us want, whether you're an alcoholic or not.
To be heard.
Is to be heard. And, well, that's just the kind of person I know I need to be and want to be.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a long time to get out all this stuff. So I believe that while it's sometimes very difficult to believe that everything has a purpose in your life, certain things can be turned into a purpose. Some things happen in life that you can't possibly see where any good is going to come out of it.
Yeah.
And that just happens. That's part of life. But there's hope anyway, no matter what. No matter what you go through. I see those miracles all the time in this program.
Yep, we sure do. I see them on the other side of this podcast table
absolutely.
On a weekly basis.
Right. So, I don't know that I have any major profound words of wisdom about that, but I'm just learning an awful lot over this past several years that the things that we create in our mind, that I'll just say that I create in my mind and heart and emotions, while they bring up old tapes. I had a counselor one time back in the cassette tape age, about the time VCRs were coming out, talked to me about how your brain remembers everything.
Yep.
And it creates tapes, and sometimes one of those tapes plays louder than the others.
Yep.
And I've experienced that. I think that's very true. I've studied a lot of behavioral sciences and a lot of theology and religion. I don't have any major academic answers for that, but it resonates within my spirit that
it could be like a jukebox, It's
yeah, absolutely.
So what happens, like input 1, 2, 3, and such song plays,
Right.
And you don't really have any control sometimes over something pushing your button 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Something happens in life, it bumps into it, your old programming takes into effect, and
absolutely.
that old song plays, or story, or whatever you want to, whatever synonym or metaphor you want to use for that, plays and knowing that, being aware of it,
right,
that's what just happened is a big piece of the puzzle, and that's
absolutely.
part of why we do the inventory and that kind of thing, so that today, like you said, I don't know that I think any better than I ever have, really, but I'm able to be aware that instead of falling into this reactionary thing of like a pinball in a pinball machine where I'm just careening off of one thing into another, and today I can say, oh, that's why I'm doing that.
Right.
Hold on a minute.
Right.
Stop. Quiet that song. Stop that reaction. We're going to do it different today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think I always took those tapes kind of as a defeatist attitude that I'm never going to be free from that kind of stuff. And to a certain degree, we may never totally be free from that.
I don't think you do. I don't think you erase that stuff 100%.
I think our tendencies are to think in this day and age is that we just want to be done with that. And I'm over that now.
Yeah.
Never going to happen again. And that's just not, in my experience, not true.
Right.
Used to, when I heard those kinds of statements, I'd get very discouraged. But I don't get discouraged about it anymore because I recognize the patterns. And, through this program and through my faith, it's given me the tools and the strength to be able to observe those things about myself. And even though I don't like them, call them character defects or whatever you want to call them, that I don't have to feel less than or feel like some dirty, rotten piece of dirt. Fill in the blank with any expletive you want. That just because I have these problems, or just because I feel this way, or just because I think this way, but accept it. This is a big thing in my meditation yesterday at the meditation meeting. I realized is I had a new level of acceptance for what I've been experiencing, and acceptance of myself, and acceptance of all these different things that I've been worried and fearful about, and just accept them instead of trying to struggle inside to try to fix it all or figure it all out. We all have that tendency in the program anyway. We think that we can figure everything out. It's part of that not recognizing that we are powerless over alcohol.
Yeah, that a lot of things. Well, the book says we can rest, satisfaction, and happiness if we just manage well.
Exactly. Yeah, that's precisely.
This need to know kind of thing where I've got a thing where I need to be able to, and I have a fix it switch in me.
Oh, me too.
And if you show me something, I mean, if you begin to tell me about your dryer is broken and not working at home, I'm already wheeling around about what model is it and what can I do to fix it.
Right.
I do that in relationships with other people. I do that with when you're bringing me something where my job is really just to listen to you.
Right, exactly.
You're bringing me something that, I really have to resist the flip side of that is I may have some experience to share with you that could be helpful, but I got to be real careful that I'm not ending up jumping in and trying to fix your problem.
Right. Yeah, that's really was my thought and sentiment when I was talking about asking people questions and not being so quick to say, well, I've experienced X, Y, Z, and I can really relate to how you feel. Those kinds of statements are valid, but it's not about me. It's about the other person.
Yeah.
And so I just see all that my mind's racing already because I just see all that happening, how selfish and self-centered I can be, even though I never considered myself to be selfish and self-centered. And I've always been a big people pleaser and bent over backwards to do things for friends and family. And there's nothing wrong with that, but doing it to the point to where you feel like that's the only way you're going to have your worth in your life, there's more to it than that. But this idea of not fixing, managing, and control everything. Through what I've experienced over the past few years, I've realized I've had some situations. I still have some situations right now. I don't have any idea how to fix it. But part of that, like I said, was talking about from yesterday, is accepting, okay, I don't have any answers today. Does that mean I'm never going to have any answers? My counselor that I go to asks me always, every time I bring something up, what's the evidence to substantiate what you're thinking and feeling? And a lot of times there's just no evidence. And then you realize, though you don't want to because you're hurt, you're upset, whatever, you're scared, lots of fear, that the fact of the matter is, well, there's no evidence there, so why should I be afraid?
Yep.
It's okay not to have all the answers. Now, we know all those things rationally and logically, but for me, it's
reactionary thing.
Been a very long time, and once again realizing that in my life, that I don't have to have all the answers. I don't even know how to fix it all. But that's why we have each other. That's why we have a higher power.
Yeah, it's a quintessential being in the moment, present in the moment thing. I mean, there's so many things that fall back to that because, we're worried about this thing that may or may not happen, or we're worried about this thing we're sure is going to happen.
Right.
And we instantly go to the worst case scenario. Almost always. That's another trait, and I would say it's an alcoholic trait, but I think it's a trait of all humans, to be honest. I think few people escape the trap of going to the extreme negative assumption of what's going to be the outcome.
Yes.
The extreme negative outcome will be what I'm looking at. My throat is sore. I've got throat cancer.
Right.
And it's not that I just got that the allergies are bad in the Ohio Valley.
Right. Right.
So then we do but the antidote to that always seems to be to come back to him. I ask myself that quite often, and I ask other people that when they're looking that they're in that fix of that. I don't have an answer for you, but are you okay right now?
Right.
And most of the time, the answer is, yeah, I'm safe. I'm
Right.
okay right now. I'm okay now.
Yeah.
This other thing happens, maybe I won't be.
Yeah. Right.
But there's no sense in letting that fuck up today.
Yeah. 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 I've had to give myself a lot of inner dialogue, devote a lot of inner dialogue to reminding myself that, okay, right now in this moment, do you have food to eat, clothes to wear, transportation?
Gas in the tank, right? Everything's...
It's gas in the tank, whatever. Yes,
friends.
I'm okay right now. Yes, I have friends. Because again, this death spiral mentally that I've been on for the past few years, again, and it's part of the disease, is so insidious because we can get to the point, or at least I can, to the point to where, no, people don't really care anything about me. I've said that before.
Yeah.
And really kind of ingrain that that pattern, that thought pattern that to almost becomes a full part of you. The only way I know it hasn't become a full part of me is because I'm getting beyond it. And again, I go back to the fundamental things that have allowed me to get through to this point in my life and look forward to something optimistically instead of a dismal future is this program, the fellowship, Big Book, my faith. And for me, I have a community of people that I've grown to really love, and I know they love me at my church. And that's all of those are extremely valuable. And again, acceptance. Accept the good that you have in your life and not discount it. I've been a master discounter all my life. Something good can happen. Yeah, but.
Yeah. Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop, or that's not good enough.
Yeah.
So I got to do more. Got to have more. Got to be more.
That living in scarcity and not enough and not having enough, all that same old drum beat.
And it's not to say that having ambition or trying to move forward in your life is not a good thing. It is a good thing.
It's all good. It's no problem having a lot.
Right. But when you allow it to consume your thoughts and emotions to the point to where just because you haven't reached that next level or gotten beyond this particular problem or this relationship is not the way it ought to be, doesn't mean that life is over and that you have to be miserable the rest of your life. But
that's the other thing. Yeah, we tend to get stuck in a thing of that this is the way it'll always be. Too.
Yes. Yeah, research shows that. I work in the investment field, and there's actual scientific research that's gone on that from in the field that from psychology that says that people have do a lot of mental shortcuts, and one of the mental shortcuts is that we see what's happening and we automatically project it forward like this is the way it's always going to be. And that's just not true. I fight it every day in my business because I talk to people and they're always worried about what's the market doing today? What's the tariffs going to do to us? Insert any kind of fear about economic or social issues. And I have to remind folks, especially at least the field I know, when it comes to investing, and I think this is a metaphor for life, is that things move in cycles. Just because we're encountering a certain circumstance today, it may have a temporary effect on the market, or whatever we're experiencing in our life may have a temporary effect, good or bad, in our life. Does not mean there's absolutely evidence to prove this, that it's not necessarily the way it's always going to be. With investing, it's not going to be that way always. We go through ups and downs, declines, sometimes significant bad periods, and people want to accentuate the bad over the good. There's scientific evidence of that.
Negative weighs more than positive.
It's not just an emotional thing that we intuit is right, but it's true. There's substantial body of research that shows that people, I know in the field of investment studies, people feel the impact of a loss 2.5 times greater than they have an equal positive gain. So the more negative stuff that happens, it just gets compounded,
right,
and magnified at least 2.5 times.
Yep.
That's
we do that in everything. We do that in every single aspect of our lives.
Right. So
Everything negative. It's like the molecular weight of negative is more than positive than what positive weights.
And it's for all the good that technology and social media and all that stuff has done that's good, there's a dark side. And I just bring that up because that's a current issue in our world today and can affect our sobriety. Not only our actual sobriety, staying away from drugs and alcohol, but emotional sobriety. Is that tendency to exacerbate and sensationalize things. And we alcoholics are masters at doing that.
Yep.
Whether it's quietly within our own mind and heart, or whether it's, like you said, I got a sore throat, so now I got throat cancer.
Yeah, the flip side of that is our little drum we beat on. It's the no big deal.
Right.
What we suffer from is a lot of big dealism of wanting to make everything a big deal. That oh no, this has happened. Oh no, this. Everything's got to be a big deal, especially my stuff, right? Now, your stuff is not such a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, and we probably, I don't know about you, but I certainly have people in my life that their problems are much worse than my problems.
Yeah.
I could be laying in bed from a massive heart attack, and somehow with certain people in my life, whatever they're going through is a lot worse.
Yeah. That's human nature too, that's exactly the same thing as that negative bias.
Right. So I didn't mean to go off and start preaching a sermon or anything, but it's just I see those things, all those kinds of things. I'm once again relearning and training myself, so to speak, to recognize when I see these patterns in my life, to recognize the things that are not good for me and the things that are good for me, and to accentuate those things that are good for me and minimize the ones that are not good for me.
Yep.
Such as for me, I've been way too stuck in watching TV, spend hours watching TV, and then that just exacerbates my misery. Too much time in social media. I've noticed a negative effect on myself emotionally.
Yeah.
And it's just an escapism. It's escapism whether we're drinking it, or gambling it, or whatever.
Yep.
So, again, I don't think I would, while I have encountered and experienced a lot of good education, some good counseling, I've had many wonderful opportunities in my life. Working this program of recovery has been the next level of creating the kind of life that I really want to have, and I'm eternally grateful for it, because it's just it does require work, it does require effort, but it does bring about positive change. It's like we say at the ends of meetings a lot of times, keep coming back. It works if you work it.
Yep. Silly little cliche thing, but it's true.
Right. Yeah, I've encountered, I had a psychologist one time talk to me about how abysmal the results were from AA, and I'm thinking from my experience on the outside looking in, well, what have you been able to do that's better? I didn't say that to her, but
yep.
Positive, lasting change.
Yep. And you go sit around and look in meetings, and this is a really recovery's strong here in our region. And
sure
you
is.
Go sit around and look at. We went to. We just dropped in. I have a friend that came in town, and we spoke about it a little bit, but come in town yesterday for my nicotine quitting adventures, and we first time being able to meet him face to face, and it was kind of neat to be able to do that. I've had a couple different chances where I've only known these people. They're from all over the country. Matter of fact, I know one guy that was in our group is from Japan, or lives in Japan. He's stationed there, but so it's all over the world kind of thing. But we had the opportunity to have dinner with him. But afterwards, that wasn't my point. My point was afterwards, Rob and I were out and we were with them, and it was quarter after 7, something like that, a little after 7, and we was like, what do you want to do? And what we said, well, you know what we did? We went to a meeting.
Cool.
And that's the thing, to do. And we go
Right.
in, and neither one, I'd never been to this meeting before, a speaker meeting, this
Right.
particular one.
Okay.
And she just used the phone and said, how about this one? And we go in there, and I bet there was 100 people in there.
Wow.
From all walks of life are in there. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you said the AA is not working, or, 12-step recovery is not working very well, or has a dismal
Right.
result,
Right.
what, rate of return or something maybe.
Yeah.
But there was 100 people in that meeting last night that seemed to be doing a little bit better, because that's where they were sitting rather than someplace else
Right.
on a Saturday night.
Right.
And the same thing, in this morning, go anywhere. And so, it's not saving the world right now, but it's sure creating a better life for a lot of people that
Absolutely.
otherwise have some pretty freaking shitty lives. And not to mention that whole ripple. We talk about the positive ripple effect of what recovery does, and how we have able to have a positive effect on there. But man, the negative bias does actually, I believe, fall true in some of these things. So there, like you said, there's actually some real evidence to it.
Right.
That my drinking and using had a greater negative influence on the people around me
Sure.
than the positive at some level.
Sure.
It weighs more.
Probably even more than we really realize.
Yeah.
That's
So
something
you turn
I'm
that
kind
around, and you get to do something different and have that other thing going on. I know that there's been a couple changes that's happened in your life, and you've made some. You said that you struggled with some things of late in the past, and I don't. I'm in this. I get in these. I guess the best thing, the more positive way to say it, is a synchronicity kind of thing. And what I keep on hearing, what keeps on happening to me lately is that I can't wrap time around things.
Yes.
I told my story yesterday on the podcast, and the timeline, if I would try to lay this thing out in chronological and put days and times by it, it wouldn't work.
Right.
There's no way that works.
Yeah.
But I know that to be true because I lived through it.
Right.
And so then I just go, you know what, this whole time thing, and I know it gets a little cliches too about it being just time is just it's not real.
Yeah.
Then I'll just take that thing and say it's not real. So my point back to this is that in some recent past you've had some changes happen. I know that, and I'm hesitating a little bit about how much you want to talk about it, but I do know that there's 3 points that I always try, and it kind of comes back to the Bill Wilson's deal on when we wrote the book. He talked about and we use it for the framework of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Obviously, you've talked about we discussed excuse me what it was like, and I always want to make sure we get some of that childhood stuff in it, because I think we can bypass that. I like Bob Earl says in one of his talks, he said he went to see a psychiatrist, and he started, at age 15, and she said, well, tell me your life story or something like that, and he said, well, at age 15, I started drinking, and and he went on and went on and went on. And you were not born at age 15. And backed him up, because we have things, and what I believe, and obviously I'm not, don't have any grounding in this, any education or anything, is that we have this alcoholism thing. We've labeled it alcoholism, no different than we named you Mike arbitrarily. Somebody said that is
Sure.
Mike. We say this is alcoholism. That's
Sure.
what we name this thing that we have, and it just makes it easy to do, so we can put a finger on it. Once we, no different than we say this is an apple or that's a horse. Alcoholism. I was born with it. And I can see the symptoms of it as you shared as you grew up, and that isolation and different things of not feeling good enough, and
Right.
Living under the scarcity. And then we have certain things that exasperate that. We have things that happen in our lifetimes, whether if it's some kind of trauma like parents getting divorced, or we have some kind of abuse or peer issues or whatever it is that ends up causing that to be worse and take hold a little deeper. Then we hear about what happened, like the how the disease will progress generally is what happened, right?
Right.
There'd be some crescendo to
Right.
says, okay, I got to get some help for this.
Right.
Well, for some people that's pretty easy. I'm for some people that's, I like somebody else, to stump my toe and spill my mimosa at the pool and say that's enough. I'm done with this, and that can be enough, right?
Sure.
Other people go to prison or kill people, or have any number of way on the swing side of consequences. The third thing that I always like to talk about is things that are like what I call the miracles, and the things that happen that probably wouldn't be. I like the way that Frank says it, is that this is the life that almost didn't happen.
Yes.
I love it, the way he puts that. That's the same thing as my miracle list that I have, is the things that wouldn't have happened in this life had what we all live by inches and seconds. An inch to the left and a couple other seconds, and I could still be in prison.
Yes.
I could still be in prison today. Had I gotten that 20 years full term sentence, which was highly unlikely, I understand, that I would get the full book thrown at me, but I could have.
Sure.
And I certainly, had I stumbled around and repeat offended while I was in trouble, it'd been real easy to ramp that up.
Mm-hmm.
And I very well could have done that. So back to this miracle thing, I know that one of the things is one of the miracles I can say is just your personality shift.
Right. That's my watchword for the day, by the way. I keep saying right, so forgive me, everybody.
In the past, I don't know, once again, I'm struggling. I want to put a timeline on it, right? But in the past months, less than a year,
yes.
In the past 6 months, maybe
yes.
so much, that you've had a pretty big shift in your personality and your outlook and the way that you operate and the way that you interface and with others. Mm-hmm. I'll just speak frankly on we had a retreat last month.
Right.
And you were a completely different dude at this retreat than I think 2 other ones you had been at
right.
for a certain period of time. But you could not be in the circle in those other 2 times. And
correct.
This time is a complete different shift where you're engaged, you're in the deal. I know there's a little bit of something, and that's what I hesitate. I know there's a little bit of something we talk about. I like Brene Brown says is when we numb the good. We can't numb the bad without numbing the good. So anytime we're doing anything that's numbing us, regardless, and it obviously for us it ends up being with the drugs and alcohol, but I can also do it with other things, and I can do it with things that are frankly prescribed to me.
Sure.
And that are, from all accounts, something that I maybe could, but the medical community believes I need. And so I don't know if you want to share about any of that kind of thing that might be around, or any other miracles. I know that another miracle I know is that you've been able to play a role in your mom's declining health.
Yes.
At a place that I'm certain you wouldn't be able to if you were still using.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Probably not as effective as you would have 6 months ago or a year ago.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I'm not worried about my anonymity about this, but talked about the journey of dealing with depression. Yes, I have taken antidepressants for a long time, and during this recent storm, didn't help a lot. I've been totally afraid to totally get off of them, because there have been times, honestly, I was so depressed that I wasn't going to hurt myself, but I sure felt like I didn't want to be on this planet anymore. And I was also started a few years back having severe anxiety and panic attacks. And so I was prescribed a benzodiazepine for anxiety. And I talked with Dr. Brady about it too. And there was not any big concern about it, though it can be very addictive. And for whatever reason, I never had any desire to take it to make me feel better. Actually, over the period of years, it caused me to really go into a fog. It just exacerbated everything that I was experiencing. And let me just say this, if anybody's out there listening, I'm not saying do this on your own. Consult with Wise Medical and consult with your sponsor.
Same as all the rest of these things. We don't do any of this alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
We always seek appropriate help and advice and counsel before we make any kind of changes like that.
Well, you and I talked about it a lot for a period of time before. Even though my anxiety has been very high and I was afraid to get off of it, I didn't like what I saw happening in my life. It kept me in a fog. My reaction times on things literally was worse. My memory was worse. And that fog was visible. That's one of the big changes that I can see in you, and I'm alluding to, and I just didn't really want to totally
take you there without your permission.
Sure. No, that's quite all right.
But that's that. It did. It had a fog. It had you in a place that at times you'd look at you and you're like, you weren't here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now when I look at you, the lights are on in there. And I don't see that old closed door mic that used to be there.
Right.
The lights are on and you're open. You're bright today.
Yes. Well, as I said, for a period of time, and I have my times, even before I came over here, I got really anxious again.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm in a position now where I can think a lot more clearly. My memory's getting better. I've been off it maybe 6 months. And by the way, that's something I had to literally wean myself off of over several weeks.
Right.
I tried to do it over a few days, and that was really bad.
Right.
And then when I got the wise idea to call my doctor about it, I was advised, no, you don't want to quit cold turkey like that. You do it over 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I can speak from experience. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the wrong thing to do, to try to cold turkey. I thought I was going to go out of my mind, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, my thinking has become a lot clearer, and I've been better able to face my fears and my anxieties and take some action about it, even if it's just a little action. Because my greatest tendency is, if you can't fix it all right now, then it's just not worth the effort.
Yeah, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
We're all or nothing people. We're black and white people. There seems to be, we don't see the gray.
And I think maybe it was you, somebody else. I know others have talked to me about this, and somebody else posed the situation to me a couple of weeks ago. Take an inventory in your life of what's not working, and ask yourself, essentially, what are you going to do about it? And look at what's working, and eliminate those things that are not working in your life.
Yep.
And for so long, I just felt hopeless and powerless over it, and that medication was a big influence on keeping me in that state.
Yep.
So for me, didn't fix anything overnight. Still hasn't fixed some of my circumstances, but those take other solutions. But it has made a huge difference in my thinking, my ability to follow instructions, follow suggestions that we give one another in this program, and take the experience and education and background that I already have to know how to do these things, to do them for myself.
Yeah.
And recognize that Rome wasn't built in a day. Certainly I hope some things, as we all do, change quicker in my life than maybe they will happen, but that's okay. I heard back when I was a kid that statement of living one day at a time.
Yep. It's an age-old concept.
But I always rejected it because it's like, I can't do that. How can I do that? Well, the only thing I've been able to find in this program is to literally do it. You just have to bring yourself back to the present moment, as we've talked before. Yep.
And we've got lots of practices that help us do that. Meditation is a practice that helps you stay in the moment. That's really what meditation is.
Well, that's
really what it is on a very base level. You are practicing for a few minutes every day, hopefully.
Right.
Of being right here, right now. And some days that practice works better than others.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that I'm practicing it every day. And if I go out and hit a golf ball for 15 minutes every day, I'll get better at it.
Right.
If I shoot a basketball for 15 minutes every day, I'll get better at it. If I shoot my bow for 15 minutes every day, I'll get better at it. If I meditate for 15 minutes every day, I'll get better at being present and staying present in my life, moment by moment.
Yes. Yeah, that's another thing over literally the past 5 or 6 months. Started attending a group meditation meeting that's just, for me, been very powerful.
Right.
I've always had difficulty trying to meditate on my own, and I still struggle with it. I'm not good about doing it every single day.
Me neither.
But there's something about group meditation for me. There's something magical about it. There's
power in a group, period.
The power in
peer pressure works for us.
Yes.
Because it keeps your ass in the seat.
Yes.
Because you don't want to get up and walk out of the middle of meditation.
Well,
if I'm sitting at home, I got that option.
I believe.
To get up and go change the laundry or whatever else might need to be done in the middle. But when I'm sitting in that meditation meeting or in a meeting of a group of people, it'll keep me there. That's a pretty simple little thing that I found, at least for me, when I first started meditating, was doing it in a group, kept my butt in a chair.
Well, I know it was suggested to me for a long time to go to that, and I kept resisting it. It's all that part of that isolation. And once I really did, it's become a very powerful force in my life.
And that dynamic of when somebody brings you something, we are all, I believe we're all guilty of that. When somebody brings me something that works for me and I say, Mike, have a piece of this.
Yes.
Instantly I go, no, I reject your shit. And I'm like, no, I got this, So I was like, man, you really ought to come to this. Not me. I didn't say this. It wasn't me. But Mike, you really need to come to this meditation meeting. I have something to doing on Saturday morning, or any number of,
Yeah, which in fact I didn't have anything to do that Saturday
And I'm
morning.
not saying that's what happened here, but that's just an example of what I do when somebody, for the longest time on that Tuesday night meeting, I had a friend was telling me to come to this Tuesday night meeting, and and on Tuesday mornings I sit right across the thing from him, and I'd see him every day, and he'd say, you ought to go to that meeting with me, and I'd go, thanks, buddy, but no thank you. I have something else I do on Tuesday nights. I wasn't doing nothing. But I could not accept this guy's invite for months.
Yes.
And it ended up being like revolutionized my whole damn recovery. It saved my life finding that Tuesday night meeting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But for a long time, I said, no, thank you. And I joke around about this, and I've said it a number of times, I think, on the podcast and in other places. That comes down to, like, when you bring me something, like if you could bring me a plate of chocolate chip cookies, or you could bring me, something like that. Like Josh going to offer me a combo pretzel, and I go, no, thank you. Hell yeah, I will eat the whole bag if you turned your back. But when you hand it to me, I go, nope.
Yeah,
it's a funny dynamic. It
really is.
We're weird creatures sometimes.
Oh, and I've wasted too much time in my recovery not heeding the suggestions of other people.
So what? That other thing that comes around, and I keep on getting all these different like wisdom things. Because I am beginning to be open to this stuff, and that's another, like in yoga is where I've heard this, and I know it's other places, but it says be a yes.
Mm-hmm.
That in my yoga practice, the guy who does that, Baron Baptiste, is a guy, and in his book, and he's even got some stuff in there. One of his core principles is be a yes. Say yes to things. Quit going no.
Right.
No.
Yes.
That won't work for me. I don't like that. I'm suspect about that. Yeah, man, I'll try that. If I don't like it, so that I don't do it again, right?
Right.
Or maybe I need to try it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, usually in
give it a shot. And
instance.
If it doesn't sit with me, well, then okay, Maybe yoga wasn't going to be something I like to do, But it turned out it was.
I think in most instances where you're invited to try something, like AA, for example.
Yeah.
If you go one time and say, well, that sucks, I'm not doing that again. You haven't given it a fair chance. You really don't know how something is going to impact your life till you give it a sincere effort.
Yeah, that's another thing I always say about like coming to our particular home group. I'll say the same thing. And then when my kids started going to Alateen, which is another one of the things that's on my miracle list, is that my kids they engaged in that early on in my recovery. It was a little bit of a function of they didn't have a lot of choice, sort of, although they did. But they were big on one of the things in their little tenets in their welcome packet said, please come to 6 meetings.
Yes, that's good. That's great.
Come to 6 meetings. If you don't like it, but give us a chance and come. We'll ask you to try 6 times before you make up your mind.
Right. Yes.
And so I kind of land on that today with other people because it's the same thing, people. Another one of the ones that's really tough is people who are looking for help for their loved one that really need to like be going to some kind of Al-Anon or something like that, and they'll go to one and they won't like it, and
I've got a friend now. I don't know the whole circumstance, but their son is in the throes of alcoholism, and I've encouraged them to seek out Al-Anon or some kind of support group because I know they're very distraught about the situation. This young man's young man to me, he's probably about 40, and I know it's just tearing the family apart, and all those feelings of, did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? That's just natural.
And their fix-it switches are getting flipped, and they're unable to fix it.
So I've really emphasized to them, and I'd emphasize to anybody, you have to take care of yourself, too.
You do.
If you don't, you're not going to be what you need to be.
Another core principle, man. You want to change the world? You want that out there to change? You got to change.
You got to change, yes.
I have to change me.
Because ultimately, that's the only thing we really have control over.
Yeah.
Any,
And
if
you know,
wanna
and
call
what
it
I
control.
find, and as we find, is that when I do actually do that, all that stuff does change. Now, whether maybe some of it's just my perception of it,
Right.
it really didn't change, but it changes as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of it actually did change
Yes.
as a result, as a direct ripple result of me operating different in the world. Some other things are operating different too, and we
Mhm.
all can take credit for that.
Well, another-
PSSR is another place for people that need Al-Anon or need to have loved ones, kind of thing. You know, where you don't really have to have any qualifying conditions,
Mhm.
what pre-existing
requirements.
conditions.
Oh well, yeah,
or-
pre-existing conditions.
Yeah,
per se.
there's no prerequisites. There's no, you can just come and do it.
Right.
Wherever you're. That's one of the things I liked about the 12-step yoga stuff, and just because they said if you are struggling with alcoholism or addiction, or you're affected by somebody else's, there ain't many people can escape those two statements.
True.
There's
Very
a few,
true.
but
Well, another. I just have to say another miracle that I probably wouldn't have been here for if I would have continued down the path I was on, or certainly not been present and available for, is the birth of my granddaughter.
there you go.
It's first grandchild, and
Yeah, man.
it's just I never thought about it a lot, but you have in the back of your mind when you start having children that, well, someday I'll be a grandparent. And you know
Yeah.
other people that are grandparents, and boy, once it happens, it's bringing you back into the day when and reminds you of when your children were young.
Yeah.
I haven't been around babies for years, and
Yeah.
it's just a cool experience.
Yeah, that freshness of that is really cool,
Yeah.
and
To
especially
look at
especially
her
at the arm
innocence.
distance of the grandparent too.
Right. To look at her innocence and see that life forming and taking on growth, and just watching her change. She's little over 3 months old right now, and the past 3 months have flown by.
Yeah,
That's definitely a miracle.
absolutely. That goes on the miracle list.
And I
And
consider.
I'd say, I encourage every time I get a chance to do this, man. Well, you should write this stuff down. And I don't mean the you, Mike. I mean the you collective out there listening. You, when these things happen, no matter how small or how big they are,
Mhm.
put them on a piece of paper, man.
Yes.
Write them down. I keep a note of them in my phone, and then I actually send that note to myself once in a while so that I can keep like a backup copy of it.
That's great.
And however insignificant they seem to be, no different than like doing inventory. When you write it down, there's some power behind that, and I can promise you that. Like my miracle list is getting to be a couple pages long, and it's just bullet kind of items. I got a whole story behind every one of them, right? Yeah, but I encourage
That's a good
everyone to
idea.
make a miracle list and go back and think of some other ones too. Hell.
I need to do that myself
Because
because
meeting certain people, meeting Spiritual Underground was a miracle.
Sure.
And my sponsor, and other things. The way this support group has evolved.
yes,
I mean, I don't know any other guys that's got each other at the level we got each other.
no, it's very easy for especially we guys to have our tough exterior or walls up, and we don't want to be vulnerable.
I got this.
And yeah, I got this, and sure taught a lesson of humility to me. Not humility like I'm terrible or awful, but just humble, becoming more humble, to be vulnerable with people, and then learn to, within my own self, train myself to accept the fact that that's okay for me to be vulnerable. Like I teared up earlier.
Yep.
Instead of feeling self-conscious and like nobody likes me or somebody's going to think ill of me, vulnerability is a great thing. And I see that happen a lot in our group.
Yep.
Guys really talk about real things,
Yep.
real issues.
And when somebody breaks something out, somebody else is always got a Me Too story with it.
Yes.
Rarely somebody got they're the only person that's experienced that, but we sit on it. We don't want to share it, and then somebody gets it out, and then then you got a group of guys. Well, yeah, hey man, I did, or I've had that happen, or whatever. Me too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, well, I don't know if I phrased it this way, but when I talked about getting off that medication, I consider that a miracle because I was pretty resistant to doing that for a while. Fear of what are going to be the consequences. I had some bad experience of changing medication in the past, and it was really bad.
Yep.
And so I was afraid of that. But, it's a little miracle in life. I'm reading a book, I forget the author's name, but it's called The Miracle Equation. And it talks about having unwavering faith and giving extraordinary effort. And those two equal to miracles. And the miracles being not necessarily in the realm of what we think of a miracle. Somebody mysteriously is healed of cancer, or but how extraordinary things happen when you exercise your faith. Or like I was thinking yesterday, I just need to really take the risk in a couple areas of my life and just accept whatever happens, and then put forth the effort. And the extraordinary effort can just be something as simple as going to meditation and getting these insights. And one little bit of tidbit of insight, enlightenment, can change your whole perception, which then can catapult you forward to having greater things happen for you in your life, and not only your own life, but the lives of those that you're around.
Yep. That ripple.
So, I think the other, for me, on the line of miraculous is coming out of this fog and this serious pit that I've been in for several years. I stayed persistent doing the things that I knew to do, like staying engaged in this program, staying involved with the fellowship. For me, staying involved in my church. Not enough reading like I used to do, but I'm tooling that back up again. Things that I know that I can do to take action to make progress. There are times where I've gone to meetings I don't want to go. The retreat, you mentioned how I was more engaged. For a few days before that, I kept having those same old feelings. I don't really want to go.
Yep. And
I'm really glad that I did. It was
some of that anxiety, like coming here. You said you was nervous. Had some feelings wrapped about coming here, and like he says, the things are those are normal feelings, right?
Yes.
The deal is to walk through them, face it,
exactly,
and walk into it, and then nobody hurt you, nothing went bad, and you get that positive reinforcement from having walked through it, and you can walk through the next thing.
I like that statement. That's a good statement of walking through something. That's what I'm walking through all this stuff now.
Yep.
Intentionally, as opposed to passively sitting around expecting things to change when there's nothing. I'm not putting forth any kind of effort per se to do it.
Yeah, and taking those actions like you just said. I heard you say that earlier. Too much TV.
Yes.
Well, you said I'm not reading enough. Well, there's exact direct one of these things. The Buddha said it. At least I've been reading some things there that like a whole lot of things have been attributed to the Buddha are all not necessarily accurate. But we'll continue to attribute it to him if that's good enough. Who really gives a shit who said it, right? Just set down the things that no longer serve you, right?
Right.
And that has been my experience. Is I set down things that no longer serve me, and sometimes it's hard to set those things down. But if I set them down and make room for something new, I always get some payoff for that, And I know the world ain't necessarily wrapped up around my payoffs, but I need that. I need that positive reinforcement and the things that happen to me as I walk through this stuff by setting things down that don't work for me anymore. That I know in my heart might be okay for you, right? And that's what the other thing is, just because I'm setting it down, I'm not criticizing. Used to be that when you were setting something down that I did, I took that as some kind of rejection of me, right?
Yes.
I no longer do that, or at least I don't do it as bad as I used to or something. But it was something that's not working for me anymore because I set down TV a long-ass time ago, man. And it was actually forced on me at some level. What it was is when I was on home incarceration, I was looking for ways to pay for the ankle bracelet because it's expensive.
Yes,
TV
you told me about
was
that.
One of the optional things. I couldn't really turn off my electric.
Right.
And I couldn't really turn off the heat. and some other things like that. But I could turn off the TV and save that $100 and something a month of what I was paying, and I just never turned it back on again.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I like that statement, walking through something. Little example, yesterday I probably had the best day that I've had in years because I took action to do things that I was not previously doing. Nothing monumental, but number one, I've been way too sedentary for several years, and definitely give yourself another 15 years and you may experience this too. If you do that, you do reach a point where your body changes as you get older, and I've lost a lot of bodily strength all over my whole body.
Yep.
A lot of muscle tone. So I went and got some exercise yesterday. Went to the gym and spent a little bit of time on the elliptical, did some weights, and tried to exercise different muscle groups in my body. Nothing major, because I don't have the strength or stamina to do it anymore like I used to.
You got to start somewhere.
But 30 minutes, 45 minutes that I spent, it really did. I used to run many years ago, and I would experience that runner's high, the endorphins, just that little bit of exercise compared to the fact that I wasn't doing anything at all for a long time.
It's really a great antidepressant.
Made a huge difference. And then going to the meditation meeting, I'll always get some kind of insight, even if it's a remembrance of something that I observed or learned before.
Yep.
And got outside and helped a couple of friends a little bit with something, and then went to the gun range with my son. So instead of staying parked in the apartment watching TV and movies and stuff. I mean, There's nothing wrong with watching a movie or two here or there.
There's absolutely nothing
watching
wrong with
some
that.
TV,
but there is something wrong with that if that's what you're doing all day.
Spending hours.
That's wrong.
And yeah, absolutely. I spent several years just parked because I didn't know what to do with myself over the weekend.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to necessarily tell you what you need to do. You can ask for help, ask for suggestions, but you also have to be willing to take those suggestions,
absolutely,
and put some shoe leather into it.
And I think in your gut you know that.
Right.
Jordan Peterson says that too. If you sit with yourself for a few minutes and ask yourself some questions, you may not like the answers, but you know what they are. And you know that, and I'm not you and you across the table. I'm doing this as the collective you out there. You know, if you sit there and you think, man, I've been watching TV way too much. Well, that's going to be the truth. It's kind of like the same way of people coming in AA meetings and you're wondering if they're alcoholic. You showed up here, buddy. There's a pretty damn good chance that you got something to deal. You got some issue to deal with. Now the magnitude of it and where you're at on the scale may be different, but you sit around and you got that in your gut going, yeah, man, I really shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Or I should be doing something else, or there's more to it. What that other thing, I don't want to. Yeah, I would like to, and that's okay. My intent is not to add years to my life. My intent is to add life to my years.
Yeah, excellent. Yes. Good thought. Good thought.
And by doing that, taking action and get up and go out and do things that are good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a momentum building thing there. There's that again, I'll quote Peterson again on that compound interest in personal growth, man.
Absolutely.
If you do just a little bit every day, it's a shit ton of stuff after a year.
Yeah. And back
I found out with my yoga practice, I mean, it's just exponentially done things for me that I wouldn't even begun to thought that it was doing for me by showing up on a yoga mat for an hour a few times a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that just again reminds me of that comment you made about all or nothing. It's very easy to be trapped in, and I'm just speaking from personal experience.
What's one day of working out going to do for me?
The thought of all these seemingly insurmountable problems. What's the use? And if it can't all be fixed right now, even though we don't necessarily think that thought or consciously, that's how you're behaving.
Yep.
It's brewing.
Yep.
And
that compounds also.
Giving yourself permission to take care of yourself, give yourself permission to, even if it's some simple little action, just do it.
Yep.
That's been huge just in the past few months for me.
Yep.
As much as you'd think someone at 61 years old would have this stuff figured out.
Nope.
when those tapes play again and you listen to them too long, it can sap your energy, suck the life out of you.
Yep. It's one of the reasons, and I'm hoping that I can continue, and I fully intend to, but obviously I do I try not to violate the 1 day at a time rule.
Yes.
More than necessary, but part of this stuff is so that to do the things for me today, so that in 15 years or whatever, those habits are established, and
right.
I'm not trying to establish them then. I feel like I've lost enough time. I'll be 50 this year in August, and and it's like, okay, it's time to start living.
Yes.
This other thing, and actually and get the most out of it. My sponsors taught me no limits, man. I can do anything I want to do. Just got to get up and do it.
Yes. Yes.
I hope. So you joined a gym.
Well, I'm on a trial membership, but I think
okay. Good.
Either
that's a join.
Yeah.
All right. Good. So that's there's another little dynamic I noticed. I do some bartering for my yoga. I will work for the yoga studio at times. I am not as motivated to get in the studio when I am on bartered yoga as when it's come out of my paycheck. When I pay for it.
Sure.
When I pay for it, I'm like, yeah. Like when I haven't,
better
I
get
just
there.
Did some work and
Right.
paid for it. I'll go, yeah, no big deal. Get some skin in the game. That's another thing we have to do. There's a funny dynamic there too, man. If you don't have some skin in the game, it's tough for us to have a lot of follow up. Well, what else you got? We're getting at that kind of time. So one thing I always do, and Christopher reminded me too, if you have any concluding thoughts. I don't think I did the commercials at the beginning of it. I think I just took off and started talking.
Yeah, that's
but that's
right.
not a big deal. It's they're unpaid commercials anyway. So I'll give it. It's mostly I'm not going to worry about that. I'll catch it at the end.
I just random thoughts keep popping in my head. I was had a conversation, like I said, this week with my counselor, and I don't remember the exact context, but we were talking about being willing to take the risk to try different things, to do different things, to make changes in your life. And it occurred to me this morning that I've been sitting around for years struggling and agonizing over a particular work situation, employment, what I want to do with the rest of my life. And instead of really taking concrete action, I've just sat around a lot, not doing anything to try to make it any better, because I've been afraid, largely afraid of what can I do to make the money I need to take care of all my obligations.
Yep.
And I've been too afraid about that, not being able to find something that I could make what I thought to be enough money. And the thought came to me this morning is to be willing to take the risk to do something that's more in line with what you believe in your heart you need to do, as opposed to just doing it for the money. I had a friend of mine tell me years ago, and it was very true in a particular business partnership situation I was going into. He advised me, don't do it just for the money. Well, I did it all I was thinking about was how much more money I could make. And I did make more money, but it turned out to be a very unpleasant experience, and I had to terminate that after about 4 years. So basing your decisions, I'll just say for myself, basing my decisions purely upon pragmatic issues like how much money am I going to make is not the full part of the equation. And that also comes back into the for me, and what I believe this program teaches us that's part of our higher powers role, is to guide us and direct us. And things can happen and work out where you don't possibly even see a way.
Yep.
So let go of preconceived notions, let go of fears, and just be open to all possible opportunities and see where they lead.
Yeah, man.
As opposed to trying to figure it all out by myself like I always want to do. That's liberating. I have not operated under that belief or thought pattern for several years, and it's very freeing. So, and again, that's a little miracle for the day.
Yeah. Well, cool, Mike. Well, I'm glad you got down here. We've been kind of wrestling around getting you a time slot.
Sure.
But it popped up really quickly when it happened.
Yeah, I'm glad it did.
Yeah, me too. So I know there's people out there that are going to benefit from hearing every story we have, including this one.
Hope so.
You really do have a lot of wisdom and a lot of recovery experience to share here, and I'm glad you've done it. It always juices me up to sit here. It's again
Good.
like you was just saying something about, I'm not making any money doing this.
Right.
I would hope to. I actually, I'm keeping that door open.
Sure.
But I'm not. It's not why I'm doing it. And it's a thing you just similar to what you just spoke of. As you were sitting there, you were kind of ringing my bells. I got some things going on in my life that are aligning with my soul.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily aligning with my pocketbook.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I have to have some faith that this is I'm being led this way. It's not a matter of that I've chosen it.
Right.
It's more of a
in our society, the whole American work ethic and positive thinking and all the things that not that there aren't some values in that, there truly are, but we think that we are the master of our own fate and that we're kind of our own little island, that we can just figure it out and do it all, and you can be anything or do anything you want to do. Well, that's only true if you are open to the possibilities that perhaps what you want to do or where you want to be may take you down a different path than what you expected, and you have to be open to it. If you're not open to it, you may miss a miracle in your life.
Yep. You can drive yourself into a corner, miss the forest for the trees, all those old sayings too.
Right.
Yeah, man. Well, cool. Well, I think we'll close this thing up.
Okay.
Unless you got something else you want to say.
I just hope what I've said
have you back. That's the other thing about this. Even though what I'm finding out is we do these things and we end up with 2 hours or so of content, there's always more to say.
Sure.
But I think that's a good window. I went a little bit long yesterday, longer than I wanted to, and of course I can be full of I can talk a lot, so it didn't surprise me a lot. Y'all check out spiritualunderground.org, please. There's pictures of the guests. There's little show notes on there. You can put the faces with the names, and there's also a contact me page on there if you have any questions and you want to provide me any feedback. I welcome feedback on the podcast. I don't feel like I get enough of it. I'd love for you to shoot me an email, and if it's long, short, or whatever, something's not working, something could be improved. Any suggestions that direction, I am open to listening to them. If you want to be on the podcast, you can contact me that way. Also, we're still looking for more guests, and TSSR 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. There's a book out on Amazon by James Christopher Cone. It has the 12 steps opened up for everyone, or for those who are currently in 12-step program, maybe another level of recovery you might be able to achieve by working the steps in this manner. I think that you'll find that to be the case. Once again, that's 12-Step Spiritual Recovery at Amazon. It's available in a hard copy or on a Kindle version. And finally, Darren Frank's music wraps around this podcast. It's the lead-in tunes you hear, and a whole song played on the tail end too if you hang around and listen for it. Thank you all for listening to this. Thank you all for the listenership keeps growing, and I keep on being encouraged by that. It keeps me sitting down and recruiting new guests and continue to provide content on this weekly basis. So as I've said many times before, thank you all for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner today. Peace out.
From the outside looking in, you see the cup where you place $1. From the outside looking in, just a man in dirty clothes. It never enters your mind that he has no home to go to. It's just the way it's always been, from the outside looking in. But from the inside out, you don't hear him cry out 'cause he's lonely. From the inside out, you don't see as he hides his shame. You've never felt his doubt or the pain of going hungry. You just turn away and dig in. From the outside looking in. From the outside looking in, all you see is just a soldier. From the outside looking in, you wave your flag and sing a song. You don't hear the screams in distant lands, or watch the innocent children dying. The world's as good as it's ever been. From the outside looking in, but from the inside out, you don't still hear the bombs exploding. From the inside out, you've never seen your brothers fall. And when the lights go out, the enemy starts advancing, and you're home safe in your own skin. From the outside looking in. From the outside looking in, she's just a little girl on the playground. From the outside looking in, she only seems a little sad. You don't see the bruises on her arms, or the pain that she's hiding. It's so easy to pretend. From the outside looking in, but from the inside out, she trembles at the sight of her father. From the inside out, he always hits her when he's drunk. She has no way out, because her mommy looks the other way. And it's no different when you're on the outside looking in. From the inside out, we can learn to love one another. From the inside out, we can find a better way before but you can't see it's time to begin. From the outside looking in,